Hi, my name is DM Barr, and I'm the author of such psychological thrillers as Expired Listings, Slashing Mona Lisa, and the upcoming domestic suspense thriller Saving Grace, which is coming on October 15th. In this issue, or this edition of Author Groupie, I am interviewing Lucy Kirk. Lucy spent a long tenure with the CIA, so you can be sure that I was very careful with my questions because I have no interest in being investigated at a later date. But she is going to talk a little bit about releasing a debut novel during the pandemic, issues with social media and marketing and point of view and all sorts of information, and how the book The Poison Factory related to her years in the CIA. So please sit back, enjoy, and as always, stay safe. Welcome to another edition of Author Groupie, and today I'm here with Lucy Kirk, and I'm very excited about Lucy Kirk because she's actually with the CIA, or she was with the CIA, so I'm treading very lightly with my questions because I don't want to be investigated later. Lucy Kirk is a retired CIA operations officer and a former chief of station. She spent over 3 decades working in the Central Intelligence Agency on assignments both in the US and abroad. She focused on the USSR and post-Soviet Russia, an area of the world considered most significant to the national security interests of the United States. And I don't think anybody would argue that right now. She currently teaches courses on espionage and the Cold War in New York City. So welcome to Author Groupie, Lucy. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into the CIA?
You want that story?
I do.
Well, I got my graduate degree in Washington, D.C., and that summer about 9,000 degrees of heat, I decided to apply for every job that had the word international in it, or the concept of international, because I'd already traveled some and I had the bug. And so I found the CIA in that process. It wasn't the top of my list at the time. And I went for an interview, and the interviewer said, among other things, we'll put you in training and you'll travel. And I thought, I was in my early 20s. I thought, that's all I want, maybe getting married. But that was what I wanted. My dad said, it's time to stop going to school. So I went home and improved my resume, went back the next day, and the office was gone. So that was my first CIA experience. I'm sure they just moved, but suffice to say that it was a beginning. And the next thing, I ended up eventually in a special training group where there were 9 women and 90 men. So it was really, you get the timing, yeah.
Yeah, you were definitely outnumbered.
Definitely outnumbered. And I've gone to mostly to female schools. So, it was, yeah.
So interesting, because I wanted to travel and I became a travel writer and a travel agent. You wanted to travel and you joined the CIA. So definitely different paths.
That's what I thought I was going to do anyway.
So were you a spy?
You hit on when I do my classes, first question I say, I want everybody to please tell me what is a spy. Because for me, a spy is a person who commits treason, who rats on his or her country. And so it's a very bad word. I was in what you're implying, yes, I was in the side of the house, the Directorate of Operations, which was the clandestine service, which was the side that does the collection of intelligence and with agents. So, and sources. So I think the answer to your question as you're asking it is yes, but I don't believe I never say I was a spy because that's really an evil word for me.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You gave me the perfect lead in because that's how I start my classes. I say, please define that.
All right. So you mentioned 9 women, 90 men. Were you treated differently or forced to fight discrimination when you were one of the few women in the CIA?
In my career?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It becomes clearer to me over time. What happens is that you start out well after the special training, and then gradually, bit by bit, you sort of fall behind in promotions. And then as you get older and more advanced, the men are 2 grades ahead of you, and you're not getting the jobs. And so, yeah, I definitely experienced that. And I have negative feelings about it. I think it's unfortunate. I did apply for a job one time in a division after I got divorced, which was a kiss of death. And the division, this is a whole component of countries, said, we already have a woman we like. So that was my era.
Wow.
We have a woman we like. We've got one.
Ridiculous. Now, did you focus on the USSR your entire career?
No, I did my graduate work on Latin America, and I was very interested in what was happening in Latin America. I came not to really believe in the sort of domino theory and the expansion of Soviet influence in the Western Hemisphere. So I gradually started focusing more on the Soviet Union because I really believed that was the issue. I didn't, that was what was important to me. And so little by little, I started focusing more and more on the Soviet Union and Russia, and I'm glad I did. That's not what my graduate degree was in, but that's probably what it should be now because that's what I know the most about. And I don't speak Russian except for a handful of words.
Ah.
I didn't take that route initially.
I'm surprised you didn't have to speak Russian.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Did you carry a gun?
No, that's another good one. That's the spy question. Now, I don't know how it is today, but the FBI carries guns. They're law enforcement. We're not law enforcement.
I see. Well, when did you retire from the CIA? And based on the current political climate, are you glad to be gone, or do you wish you were still involved?
I think I retired. It's now been a chunk of time because I got involved again after 9/11. I came back from overseas, and then I retired thinking it was time. I'd go to New York and do something different, and I was going to consult on Russia for big banks. That was my big idea. But the world flipped suddenly on 9/11, and so that changed everything. And do I miss it? I miss what they call the hallway conversation. I miss the being with people that are really in the world and are really knowledgeable. I do not like the bureaucracy, and I really don't miss that at all. And my character in my book makes a little jab at bureaucracy. In 1947, the CIA was formed. And now there are about 18, 19 organizations. So it's really too many, I think, too much.
And so now you're teaching. Where do you teach, in case any of our listeners want to study with you?
Well, 92nd Street Y, and down at the New School, I do a class. Really, that one is for seniors, but it's sort of talented seniors, so they all ask questions like you're asking and stuff.
I love the New School.
Yeah.
So did you have to get approval for your book from the CIA?
Oh, yes. 13 months they had it.
Wow.
13 months.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about this book that they took 13 minutes to approve, 13 months to approve.
It's just, we all have to submit our books, and I did it then, and they had, after all that time, I was really getting irritated because you lose the fervor for it. There were 2 changes. One was in a cryptonym that I used, and one was in a name, so I must have hit on something. Mm-hmm. So I made those changes, and then I did some more editing, and the editor I worked with, I said I have to send it back again. She said, why don't you just send the portions that you changed? And that was very smart advice, so I sent it back again, and that went fast. And now, how many changes have I made since the last time? I don't know, but they're not substantive in terms of what's going on. Plus, my intelligence discussion, it's not cyber, it's not the high-tech stuff, so it's very traditional.
Yeah. So tell us about the book. Give us a brief synopsis, short.
Okay, the one sentence, the elevator speech. Victoria Raines, on leave from the CIA after a struggle of some sort, gets a call from a defector she handled when she was assigned to London. He says, come see me right away, darling. And she knows something's a fish, but she checked with a CIA contact of hers, and she gets on the next plane and goes and finds out that he thinks he's being targeted by the Russians. The Residentura, which is like a station for the Russians in the London embassy there. And sure enough, people start dying, and they're killed with a claw, what looks like a claw mark across the neck. And a little white stuff comes off the claw and mixes with the blood. So what gets out in London is that there's a serial killer on the loose, so we get the Metropolitan Police. And then she gets together with the MI5 and 6 people that's in part of her past. But they determine that it's the Russians, which she suspected. And they're using a modern poison instead of polonium-211, like as killed Litvinenko in 2006. They're using a modern poison, I mean an ancient poison, to look very, like it doesn't give it a radioactive or a modern quality, so it won't point to the Russians. But little by little, she and her defector identify. In the process, there's some more claw murders and some white powder, which turns into poison once it's investigated.
So what gave you the idea for the storyline? And Russian poisoning seems kind of current now. Was this based on real life experience?
Oh, not yet, thank God. I hope I don't ever have it. I think I was already onto the theme, but the killing of Litvinenko, do you know the Alexander Litvinenko murder in 2006 of the former KGB person who was basically defected to London and worked for the Brits and for a man named Berezovsky. And he spoke out against the Russians. And some people came to see him, some old colleagues. They tried a couple of times and basically gave a douse of polonium-211 in his tea. And he ended up dying a terrible death. There are a lot of pictures in the newspaper. And he does, just before his death, say who caused it. But the Russians that did it got out and went home. And one of them ended up in the Congress and in the Duma, and then another one, I don't know what happened to the other one, but basically I used that as the beginning because it really wasn't a big enough story at the time, except to the wife. And then, ironically, over time as I worked on this, they started killing again, the Skripals in Salisbury and other attacks. So I thought, oh my gosh, it is, I was on the right track.
Absolutely. So female heroine, I see some ties to Killing Eve, but I'm sure that you were not influenced by Killing Eve. What made you choose a female heroine other than the fact that you were in the CIA as a woman?
That's the reason.
That's the reason.
I spoke, but Killing Eve, I gotta tell you, I like the story. I think she's goofy. I don't think she's a good intelligence officer. She just does too much by the seat of her pants, and she's not very discreet. So I don't love her as a representative, let's say.
Okay. Well, what your protagonist, Decky, is she played by the rules, or is she a little bit of a renegade?
She's not really a renegade, and I had discussions about that. I wanted her to be fairly a real officer. But she steps outside a few times because her true love of many years has disappeared in a black operation. He's lost somewhere in Syria. She thinks he's in Pakistan. He was a paramilitary guy. And so she goes to see an MI6 guy when she's in London that worked with him. And she shouldn't do that. She stepped out of the box on that. So she steps out a few times, and then there's one scene she goes off to Oxford on her own to see a former defector, and she didn't coordinate that with the chief of station and a couple of other people because of the timeline. So she pushes the edges in that way, but she's not Carrie Matheson in Homeland, who's I think is a brilliant thing, but she's of course not realistic in any way, but she's a terrific character.
Do you plan a sequel or a series to write around Decky?
I said I never want to write another word in my life. Now I'm thinking about a prequel because I took so much backstory out of my main characters, not Decky, but the ones that she worked with. And you probably can relate to this. You know, you write the backstory and then you have to reduce it to 3 sentences and you've got 50 pages sitting on the side.
Yeah, I never delete anything. I just put it in another file and figure I'll use it some other time.
At the time, somebody told me to do that, and I thought, oh, I'll never use it. But now, for the first time, I'm giving a little thought. It was, you know, I didn't plan to ever write a novel. And I wrote a bit of a memoir, which still sits in the drawer, sort of about, it's called Obstacle Course, which is our training thing, but it's sort of a female version. And if I could redo that with a humorous edge, sort of smart aleckily, then I would do that.
And you can.
Maybe.
So, I should mention, we didn't mention the name of the book is The Poison Factory. So, and we will have you be reading from that in a little while if you choose. You chose to publish with Book Baby rather than publish traditionally or self-publish. Can you explain why you chose that route and if you're happy with that choice?
The reason I did is I worked with an editor at the end who was really good. She said, you know, you've spent all your time writing and now the hard work comes. And I thought, oh, that's absolutely not possible. I've done the hard work. Well, now I know, even just a month later, it's been social media, all the stuff has been held. But I chose Book Baby. I tried Kindle DP and I couldn't hook into the technology of it. I probably didn't try hard enough, or if I'd had a young person come train me.
Yeah.
So that was my first glance. Oh, first the publishing world itself. What happened is a couple of agents I had touched base with and communicated with, and we went back and forth a lot. And what I saw was 3 years in front of me. And I'm not getting any younger, plus the whole Russia thing really is kind of alive, maybe not this week, but in this Trump period and in this period of time, Putin is very much, I think, still, I mean, the Kremlin is still very much a serious issue for American national security. So I thought 2 or 3 years from now, when the book comes out, the issue is going to be a boring topic. And so I poked around, and then 2 people that I have written said, go to Book Baby. And yes, I did have to pay them. I just simply didn't know enough. And they've been very, very good to me. I will get published on Amazon on September 8th because of COVID. The Amazon can't deliver right now. So new writers, I'm in Kindle on Amazon, but published on Amazon will be in September. In the meantime, I'm published with Book Baby Store.
People can get your ebook now, is what you're saying, but they have to wait until September for the paperback.
You can go right to Book Baby Store, which I hope people will do, store.bookbaby, and purchase it there at the real copy, which you can't see the cover. It's because I think it's backwards, but it's.
That's a nice cover. There. Did they do the cover for you?
Yes, and at first I had my. Oops. I had my own idea, and then after it came back and I looked at it and I put it out to the younger set in my family, I said, what about these words, sort of masculine, harsh? They said, oh no, it's mysterious. And then the characters sort of standing on a street in London, which is very similar to where I lived. And then I gradually started liking it. Now I really like it a lot.
Yeah, I liked it. When I saw it, I thought it was a very professional looking cover.
So they did that for me, absolutely. Yeah. And I had a few words on it, and I had to make the CIA logo very murky because I'm not allowed to use the CIA logo, which she's standing on.
You shared with me privately that you're finding some challenges with marketing the book. Is that because your release date was during the pandemic? Can you explain a little bit about the issues you're having with social media? Because I think a lot of self-published authors out there sort of, to me, the real work is the exposing the book. It isn't getting it published, and it isn't writing it, it's getting an audience.
I'm almost glad that I didn't know what I'm learning. The first few weeks I had it out, I was going insane on my computer, taking tutorials on YouTube, on Instagram, on how to improve Facebook, one thing after another. And I thought, I'm sitting home alone and I'm agitated. How's that? And so I slowed down a little bit. I had a couple of younger people help me that were really terrific. A high school student who was just wonderful. And now I see the error of my ways. It is very, very difficult. I am, the debate comes, do you want to spend some money on getting a publicist? And so I think, I almost say it would discourage you from writing if you knew how hard it is to do the marketing, unless you're a natural marketer. I mean, I've done it in other projects in my life. I've promoted things, but this is a whole new ball game. And for example, my Instagram site, my nephew has over 10,000 followers. I have 2. That gives you an example. I'm not saying it's not going to get better, but I think Instagram isn't going to be my go-to. So I think it's very difficult. And I would say probably people who want to sell their book probably going to have to hire a publicist if they're self-publishing.
Well, I'm going to give you a tip, and I'm going to give a plug to Sisters in Crime. You're in Manhattan. New York Sisters in Crime meets when we met physically. It was on the Jefferson Market Library downtown in Greenwich Village. Meet once a month. Now we're meeting virtually. And we have terrific speakers. We have an upcoming speaker who's going to be an agent. We have another upcoming program on social media. They're
Oh,
free to attend once you're a member. So I'm happy to give you that information. And anybody else out there, it's a great organization. Same thing with Mystery Writers of America. When you join those organizations, you have access to fantastic resources and great people that share their stories.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sisters, I'm not in Sisters yet. I belong to Mystery Writers. I'm getting active in that again. But the COVID has made a difference because I can't do speaking engagements. I can't do bookstore things.
Sure.
And so it has made a difference. How much I'll find out when our life resumes.
Yeah, also blog tours. You can certainly do a blog tour, and I'll give you some names after we're done of someone I've worked with that's very good. Do you want to read from the book? I don't want to put you on the spot. If you'd like to, great, and if not, that's fine too.
Well, I can read the very beginning because I'll tell you what happened to me, and you probably went through this. I had to go back and forth between first person and third person. And when I was writing first person, my character Decky, I'd have to get in the minds of everybody else, which you've done, of course, many times, and I hadn't. So I went back and forth, and finally I saw that a few writers like James Patterson, some other writers I like, I thought they did first and third. I thought if they did, I can do it. So my main character doesn't come in for a while. So I will read 3 little pages here that'll sort of introduce what happens, who she is. In the prologue, Georgetown, 2012. I chose the year 2012, and by the way, perhaps you've been through this. One of the things I didn't know, I'd say on Monday morning, June 9th, and the editor I worked with said, you need to get the calendar of 2012 because that was a Tuesday. You're wrong. All through the book, my dates were all wrong once I chose my year. But I didn't know that in the beginning. I didn't know I was going to do 2012, and then for various reasons, I chose a year. So prologue, Georgetown, June 2012. I am done with the CIA. I've been away from Langley for over 4 months now and have become a virtual expert on Syria. Al Jazeera was my go-to media source. But despite more hours of searching the world via the internet than I could possibly log, I've gotten nowhere closer to finding my beloved Alex. In a slightly more productive use of my mind and time, I began tutoring Russian at Georgetown. And then, as it does, life took another detour. I was lounging in bed on one of those perfect June days before the miserable summer seat had set in, reading a book that had nothing to do with spies. The harsh buzz of the doorbell jarred me. I flipped my book over and jumped up to look out the upstairs window of my Georgetown house. I could just make out a uniformed presence at the front door. No one called me or dropped by early in the morning, not in my rule book, and my friends knew it. I threw on my silk robe and raced down the stairs. Another buzz. I glanced through the peephole and the capped head of a delivery man and saw the capped head of the delivery man and asked who he was. FedEx, he said. An envelope for D. Raines. I'd have left it, but you need to sign. He sounded real enough, so I cracked the door open. I'm Victoria Raines. Barely glancing at me, he flashed his FedEx ID and then showed the signature form in front of me. I signed it and took a slim cardboard envelope from him as he dashed off. That's introducing her. Now I go to chapter 1, which is not long. Ivan Fedorov had almost forgotten those early years, the Cold War now long over. As he jogged along the path of the bank of the Thames on his morning run, his past seemed foreign to him, as if it belonged to someone else. In fact, Ivan Fedorov no longer existed, hadn't for over 10 years. Now he was Robert Casca Johnston. He felt the cool breeze flow over him as he ran in solitude on what would shortly become a busy path, full of people heading off to work, just before sunrise, when the light of the day slowly emerges from the dark sky. The crunch of the pebbles and the undergrowth of the rain-soaked path were almost soothing. The smell of the wet grass held the promise of warm days ahead. Would he be happy after what he'd been through? Content, he thought. He would settle for that. The fog today was thicker than usual, but delicious compared to the bitter cold he'd endured in his past during those days in Moscow. Sometimes he found himself reaching into his pocket for his gun, like an amputated appendage, no longer there. When that happened, he always smiled and felt grateful for its absence. The gun wouldn't be comfortable while jogging, he thought with a smile. Not even a twig cracked as she made her move. It happened so fast he didn't have time to turn his head. And though she was sure she'd gotten the jugular, she gave an extra push of the claw to clinch it. A speck of white powder dropped on the ground. Her target fell quickly, without making a sound. Ivan Fedorov was dead. She gave it the proper 2 minutes and then ran calmly from the site, like a normal jogger, her weapon held tightly in her hand.
So that sounds very exciting.
That's the beginning.
Did you get a death in there early?
I got a death in there early, I know.
That's what they tell us. Got to kill somebody in the first couple of pages.
Yep.
You know what? Everybody that was from the Poison Factory, rush out and get it. It didn't get the proper amount of media attention because of the pandemic, but you can make a change. Go to BookBaby and purchase it. You said it was storebookbaby.com?
Yes, and I think BookBaby and then go in the store. Yes, absolutely. And it's easy there. And actually, it's a very good. They did a really good job on taking me through the whole process, editing, proofreading. And friends of mine are finding, you've probably been through this too, a comma here, a word there. And every time somebody tells me one, I say, no, how could I have missed it? I've read it so many times, but I get now why there's so many edits in publishing, because it keep being words that just you missed it.
Anybody who thinks they can be their own editor, no matter how good they are at editing, is insane, because you get so close to it, you just don't see it. One of my tricks is to have the computer read it back to me.
Really?
Yeah, I go through line by line. There are, I think, naturalreader.com. You can download the book and it reads it back to you.
Thank you.
And then you hear the flow as well as catch the typos. I also have used an editing program called Pro Writing Aid, which is a really good program. I hope all these people are going to send me money for I get nothing for this. I'm just saying it's been very helpful.
It's great. And for people like me who know now how difficult it is to start the process on your own, it's a really helpful guidance.
Yeah, I found that a very helpful program for getting rid of a lot of duplicate words and adverbs and things I might not have normally seen. So hopefully that can be a help when you write the next book.
Well, wow.
Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Don't investigate me. There's nothing to see here.
My influence is so significant. Just don't tell the Russians I wrote about their poisoning. That's all I ask in return.
And please, good luck with everything and stay safe.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the interview, and I'll see you soon. And Sisters of
I hope so. Take care.